Alright, hi, this is Jake. I'm going to take you through a video that's going to detail how my Android application works and how I leverage my website from 630 into an Android application, and I'll especially highlight the database connectivity. Alright, well, to start out, I'm just going to give you an overview of how the application looks, and as I do that, I'll probably pop open Sublime Text and take you through any specific coding that I think maybe you should see how that works or something of that nature. Alright. I'm using PhoneGap's desktop server application. You don't actually have to use this. I started doing this on Linux, and I don't even know if this is available for it, but you can just launch their server, their web container from the command line. But we're going to use the PhoneGap application here in this sense. Alright. Okay. So this is the folder that it's on. It's under TE, 3 S's and T. It started out, it's going to be named differently whenever I send it to you, but this is basically how I set it up. I have my little package running currently at this address. I use Ripple Emulator, which is an in-browser emulator, which just keeps updating and compiling and letting me make my changes on the fly, and I kind of prefer it to Genymotion, especially with PhoneGap. From what I've come to understand, everybody that uses PhoneGap says that this is the way you got to do it. And one thing that I will say is that it's really fast, like very quick, and it's kind of gives you a little weird thing. If I had a bigger screen, this would look a little bit better. It scales better on a big desktop environment. But I have the Ripple emulator installed. It's a Google add-on. I'll send you a link to that. And another thing I have installed is cross-origin resource sharing, CORS. This is important because I'm using a browser to emulate, and I'm not just using Genymotion or something like that, but I prefer it this way. It's just a pretty simple workaround, and it lets things work pretty easy. I really only have it installed for this specific project. I didn't really have it before. It took many days of figuring out a workaround to be able to talk to my database with this, but I finally got it, and this is how I would probably have to do it if you had it on a native device. But this is the emulator. It works exactly the same. As you can see, I have kind of this little contained header up here, and then I have my actual just website in a container below it, because I felt like my website was robust enough that I didn't really have to do anything to it, because I specifically built it to work on mobile devices. So it was really just as simple as finding the right theme for me, something that I know how to use, something that I can work with, and just kind of pushing my code into there, and then taking, the long period of time that it takes to debug things and figure out why things aren't working. And there are a couple problems that I still cannot fix, and I'm almost 100% sure that I know why I can't fix them, but I'm not sure if anyone could without changing everything up that I've done. So, alright, we'll get to those in a minute, but first, let's go ahead and open up my project folder. So I go down to test, I open it up, and you got your .cordova, there's nothing in there. You got your hooks, nothing in there. Platforms, this is important. I have Android as my only platform. I could have developed this and it worked on Windows Phone, iOS, Android, and even BlackBerry now natively. Like, I could just download this code onto the device or up into their Play Store, ran it on the device, and it would have looked exactly the same. The Ripple emulator is kind of nondescript in the sense that it allows you to basically have a view of what it's basically going to look like on all of them. And this is what it would look like on any of those devices. So PhoneGap gives you the ability to create hybrid apps, which really easy. You can pop in different platforms literally by typing Cordova add Android, and it adds Android. The only thing with that is it adds in here, you've got all of these nice files and folders, which I did not really mess around with. I actually built an app before using this in Android Studio, it was really difficult, and I really prefer the way I'm doing it right now. But you can play around in here. The only thing that's probably of note is Android Manifest. It's going to be alright on yours, but if you ever were making an application, you really have to make sure you give it permissions to use internet, because if it does not have that, then you're not going to be able to talk to your server. But after that, in here, there's nothing really else. Your Cordova folder holds a couple of things that are important, but that's all processed by Cordova, and it's pretty straightforward. So then we look at plugins. The only plugin that you need is the whitelist plugin, and it is basically just for Android. It pops it in there and it works pretty easily. That's something else that I didn't really edit. It's Cordova just generated that. Alright, now we're into the www folder. This is all the stuff that I really did, other than a few other things. But first we'll go to the config file. Config, 99.9% of it's the same. Right here, the access origins, you want it to be localhost, and then I give it another one for my contact file. And then you want to make sure you have the plugin, the whitelist plugin, listed on there in the correct version. That's about it for that. Everything else I don't think I actually changed. Oh, this will be automatically generated, but I added it in there too. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. With the config file, it generates that for you. Alright, now we're into the www, and we'll get up the emulator here and hopefully be able to show you. Nothing's really different. Oh my, that's not good. Nothing's really different than my application, really. From my my actual web application is not really different. The only thing is, I used a lot of jQuery Mobile and a certain theme with jQuery Mobile called ND2, and that's where you get this nice little header here, and you get your tabs where I can pop and use these cool little JavaScript things to pop back and forth. It looks really nice. It's a really good theme. Kind of still in the beta version. It's not perfect. I did not like jQuery Mobile's default themes. I probably wouldn't put an application on the App Store with them. It just looks pretty terrible, and that actually lends a lot to, if you're working for someone, they probably want it to appear very nice and work very fluidly, which this allows you to. Couple bumps in the road that actually probably will be fixed if I had a little more time. Could happen, but we'll get to those in a minute. Alright, the first things first, we're on the About page, so the file that we're really going to have to look at is this index.html file. Because PhoneGap only lets you have one hypertext file, you have to kind of figure out how to jam everything in there, and I tried to comment things pretty well. With this, it's pretty straightforward. It's all Bootstrap. Literally, I load everything up here. These waves and that sort of thing, that's from the theme. I didn't generate those. I actually have these in regular files, but I like to just use the online version. If I was going to deploy this natively to a device, I would just download the libraries, put them in the folder, put it on the device. It would work exactly the same, but makes it a little easier on the file size, especially for you to do it this way rather than have them in there. So, alright, we have some fonts in there. A lot of this stuff isn't too... Okay, here we go. This is it right here. We got one page. We have two total pages. This is the first page, and we're using the jQuery page data roles instead of just kind of putting things on their own pages and swapping between them. So basically this is just one gigantic HTML file, and we'll flip-flop around and kind of give the illusion that we're going to different pages. And we have the header up here, which is right here. We have this little menu icon, which is this right here. A little issue with that, I cannot get this to line up. It should be up here, but the actual circle is for some reason moved with the theme. That is something that I cannot fix. I spent a long time on it, and there's no real solution to that other than to use a different theme for right now, or use nothing up there. But I think people will be inquisitive enough to go ahead and click up here, and this is in here too. So this takes you from page 1 to page 2, and you have your header. up on top, which says Workman Dexter, and then you have your tabs, and the active one first is going to be the About tab, and then pretty straightforward from here. Most of this is just static HTML. The About page basically just using good old Bootstrap and kind of just like a template that I had for that, which was just this kind of columns thing. It was the 3 columns, and I think it just falls into one. It looks pretty nice. And then the location. This is another place where I had one small problem. Not dealing with my code, but dealing with the theme. If I don't use this theme, this map will load perfectly fine. And if I do use this theme, the map only loads till you hit about right in that realm right there. Yeah, for some reason the theme wants to cut it off. I'm not exactly sure why, but you can zoom in on this point too. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, it seemingly works, but it just will not let me do it with the current ND2 theme. But I really like the ND2 theme, and I think if I had enough time, I might be able to find some sort of solution to this. But basically, you've got the Google APIs here. I actually just did the script inline here, created a couple functions, just adding labels to maps. This is the latitude and longitude of their farm. And then you're going to set the position when you load it up right here. And then basically you're going to add the marker to the map. And my label actually is not getting generated. And I didn't really want it to get generated on mobile unless this was going to work. But other than that, that's pretty straightforward. That's not a massive amount of code. But yeah, there you have it. The only thing that's kind of a little bit out there is the zoom. It's kind of an arbitrary number you just have to play with. Same thing with the map type. I didn't have it as hybrid. I had it as, I think, just a road maps, but that doesn't make any sense. It's a lot better to look at it as hybrid, and then you're going to create your new map and bind those things to it, and then make sure you can drag it around. And I think somewhere with this JavaScript is just kind of screwing it up. I'm not exactly sure. Like I said, my original one did not have the theme on it, and it worked like a charm. So I'm 100% sure that this is not the programming itself or the code, and then it has something to do with some confliction on a pretty big project that is going to take quite a while to figure out, and I've already put a lot of hours into it, and at this point I kind of feel like it's pretty arbitrary to what I'm trying to do. So we'll go back, show you the next page. But yeah, we got this section right here, where we live. This is just static HTML, Bootstrap, and then this stuff is alright. I loaded some images in here. I'm going to go ahead and pop one of those open, be able to show you. It just takes you from Charleston to the actual site, and it tells you the Google Maps route. If you click on these, it doesn't do anything, but if you click on the actual skyline, it'll redirect you there. Pretty straightforward page. Again, just use Bootstrap to do it the first time, so I didn't really have to do a whole lot with that, other than toying around with this map for an incredible amount of time and still not being able to get it to work with this theme. So we move on to what's for sale. This is another one. I kind of had like a portfolio type thing at one time. Wanted to do a bunch of projects. Had them all kind of, if you're looking at it in the web app, they'd all be in a big grid. But on here, it's a big row. And eventually, I think the guy wanted us to kind of do if you click this, will take you to a link where it would have, or I could maybe like update the JavaScript on the screen, leverage a database with it or something, where it would pop up under the whole beef section here and tell you exactly how much the current price was of it. But I think that's sort of a pipe dream at this point, and this page is probably actually going to get dropped anyway from my mobile app, so I still don't have any photos for. I'm just using these placeholder images, but I can show you that right now. More or less, again, it's in a tab. It's under the for sale tab, and we got my container put in a row, and just basically, you're just basically copy and pasting this columns, just to create the nice little squares there, and it's basically just the same thing over and over again with this. Nothing really super difficult here. The next tab, a little more so. the history tab. It's a timeline, which is really nice, and this is really easy to do with Bootstrap. There's a bunch of stuff out there to do it with. Just went ahead and used the standard Bootstrap timeline stuff. Yeah, these are on either side whenever you load it up in the web app, but in the actual mobile application, they're just on the right. And you've already seen this, I'm sure, because I sent you my website earlier. But nothing's really changed here. I mean, the code's exactly the same. Like I said, just kind of previous template sort of thing, and just really was able to put something together that made a lot of sense for them, and still makes a lot of sense. I don't think they should ever get rid of this timeline. Maybe they should keep updating it, because I actually really like it in there. And the theme that I'm using is Amber by this ND2, and the only thing is it doesn't really match up perfectly with this, but it actually matches up really well with just about everything else, so I didn't really want to get rid of it. But that basically takes us to the end of kind of the static HTML, and we're getting into where I leverage a database into it, and this was kind of weird, but I ended up getting it to work pretty much just how I wanted to. So you go to page 2, and I actually have that pan up here. It says contact us. And this is my contact page. It's exactly like the one for my web app. Really straightforward. Just have all of these things, and I put it into a JavaScript file, and we do some data validation with another JavaScript file that's actually in here. So I will show you that right now. The Bootstrap validation file, we'll do that. Bootstrap validation file is actually a open source project, and it runs on GitHub, and I've used this before. It's really pretty robust, like for doing this sort of thing, for kind of doing just mindless, like, making sure people type the right thing into a form. You don't think it's something that would take a while, but trust me, I've screwed up enough times to let people submit things that make no sense at all, where this works a lot better. So you can go ahead and just check that out if you want. Like I said, I think they even have a little demo on their GitHub, but it's been a long time since I've been there, so you use that to do it. And here's the validation page. It just checks it. I actually might delete this stuff off up here. I just wrote that I was actually going to do a Ruby version of it for the original class, and that's what I did. But I like this this version with Ajax, where basically I'm just going to take what I get out of the HTML file, which is right here. Well, if this happens, we're going to get an error. But if we get a nice little, we get some input names, we get some emails, phone, message, we're going to go ahead and take and cut up the first name with regex, going down here, yeah. Alright, now the stuff that actually matters is this. We have the group, which you could have just put this right in here for the data, but I like to declare this before I do an Ajax call. I don't know, I think it's maybe just something that I learned, old habits die hard sort of thing. And we got Ajax, we got one of my local hosts, it's a WAMP server, and I've got my contact.php form here. And then if we get success, I'm just going to clear it off. If not, then we're going to go ahead and send kind of some weird server is currently down thing with the person's first name that they typed in. And I'll actually show you how that works here in a second, and then it's going to clear it anyway if there's an error. And then the next part, I'm actually doing another Ajax call to storage.php, which is going to store their information in a database, and it'd be cool just, something simple just to leverage it with a desktop, maybe a login from like a desktop app, and you can just pull that information off of the server with an Ajax GET call. If you want to make it a web app, you could do basically just this with GET calls, pull it out, and just, you could look at them that way. I think the email is probably better, and it does work. It does not work with this particular mobile app, but I'll explain that when we get to it. But the storage works. I can show you that I'm leveraging a database, so all's well in the world with that. But yeah, we're just going to use post the data, and then if we have a success, basically we're going to pop up a little button, tell you that your message has been sent. We're not going to tell you that we stored it, but we're going to say that And then if not, we're going to go ahead and take your first name and say there's no storage or something. Just that's more for the web admin type people with it, just to say, hey, this AJAX call isn't working versus this AJAX call isn't working. So, and then everything else is pretty much standard. So these are the two calls that we're going to make to our server, which I'm going to go ahead and pop that open real quick and go ahead and show you that. I'm going to also show you whenever I send you the file, it's going to have that. It's going to have my WAMP server in there, and it's easy enough to use. I'm not going to send you the whole WAMP server, but I'm going to send you these files, and I'll send you kind of just how I set up my WAMP server, and if you want to set it up and check them out, that's fine. But yeah, I just created a little file called contact Workman Dexter. We have this little DB file, literally 2 lines. Localhost root, don't have a password. The database is test database. And then the other one is my storage one. Storage, pretty straightforward. Again, we get them, and if they're empty, we're basically just going to echo that you didn't give me anything to work with here. And I usually just use that for kind of making sure that it's actually getting the right stuff to put into the database. And then we're just going to go ahead and get those names, put them into a variable, and then we're going to go ahead and, oh yeah, by the way, I include this db.php file with everything. I changed it a lot because you might be using a different database, but it's really small and it's pretty easy to use. I could just type that in at the top, but I like to use that in just that little sense. So then we do our little MySQL query, which this is apparently depreciated based on what my PHP logs pump out from the WAMP server, but it still works for me. I'm used to using it. So we're going to insert the form data. We're going to go ahead and put the name, email address, phone, and message in there, and we're going to echo if it's inserted, and if not, we're going to do error. I usually will have the type of error in there, but I don't need it because this worked the first try we did it. So yeah, pretty simple stuff with PHP and MySQL, especially because we're working with the local host. Let me move that over there, and then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you my contact page. This works. It just, the browser doesn't let you do it for some reason. Chrome does not want me to send things to my email account, and I don't know why exactly. Like, if you were to use this on your own server, I'm pretty sure that this would work. I see no problems with it, and it has worked for me in the past. It's just a really simple mailer. It's the same thing. You just get it, and if it doesn't work, same thing there. And then we're going to create the mail and send the message. So we're going to send it to my Frostburg email account, that sort of thing. So the only thing with this, I've tried a massive amount of stuff. I spent like days configuring my WAMP server to work with it, but every time I've ever done it with a like GoDaddy site or something like that, you literally can just use a similar type setup to what I have here, and it works like a charm usually. But for some reason, the local host does not like this PHP form, and apparently everything I read says that for some reason most browsers do not like this sort of communication, and most email clients won't really even mess around with it or let you do it anymore. So basically, this is kind of a relic from my previous site with a web application, which will eventually work, but the new one I more or less just stored it in a database. And like I said, you could, if you really wanted to, create some sort of a GET request with AJAX. In the previous one, maybe have a login page, use another database for that, and then you could maybe pull it out. But we're just doing a mobile app, and I don't think anybody with the mobile app is really going to need to do those things unless you're some sort of administration level person. But I could always add that in at another time. But yeah, this is basically how this works. Like I said, it's really straightforward, and it uses the PHP mail function, which is just going to send it to there. Same, email subject as that. Just put the name in there, and that's basically it. So I'm going to go ahead and run this pretty much now. Also, I have all my little JavaScripts included down here, but there's not a massive amount of them, and really it's just more for a mobile-based website rather than I mean a mobile-based web app. But alright, so like I said, you can pop back and forth between the pages, and it's pretty quick. Ripple works really well. We'll go ahead and type in my name. We'll say my email is Jake Wilson 780@gmail.com. We'll go ahead and type in a phone number 111-222-3311-222-3333. We're going to go ahead and send a message like, hey, how are you? I want to buy something. And then we'll say Jake. And then we go down and go ahead and click the send message button. And we're going to want to make sure that we have this cross-domain referencing on, or cross-origin resource sharing on. Has to be on, or else you're not going to be able to do this. And you're going to go ahead and say my message has been sent, and you say, alright, well, show me that that's true. So we will go to my PHP admin and go to my test database, go to my form data, and there we have it. Message, hey, how are you? I want to buy something, Jake. Phone number, email, name, and I can pull that out pretty easy, and anybody can pull that out pretty easy. It's pretty easily structured. I like storing information with web applications because you don't know what you're going to do with it, and this is a good time to say that that would make a lot of sense in this situation, because obviously, and I'll show you real quick, the mailer does not work. It should have worked then, and it just does not. And everything that I have found online or in any book or whatever, because PhoneGap is pretty new, it might be something to do with the emulator, Ripple emulator, because it's in its beta phase. It might not like that sort of thing requested, but it can communicate with servers, as you can see. But it also could be something, and it does clear the fields, as you can see with that. But so other than that, that is pretty much it. I'm probably going to go ahead real quick and show you some of my images here. I only really have two. This examples won't be in there. That comes with the PhoneGap install. And my CSS, basically you call it Bootstrap, the min here, Flex Grid Box, which is kind of like this ND2 themes version of Bootstrap, but it doesn't really, I don't really need it, but it's there. The iconic font, which is just a font that they use in this header, I guess. The amber theme for it, which just basically colors the top header here, that color, and native Droid 2 CSS, and then the original Workman Dexter CSS file to kind of beautify everything up. After that, there's not a whole lot here. Like I said, I'm going to make a nice document up about how to install it, how to run Ripple in the actual browser. But after that, I feel like I've kind of touched just about everything. Like I said, I tried to be really thorough with this and show you that, yeah, it has a couple problems, but they're more or less from the actual environment itself rather than the code and me as a developer in that sense. Like I said, I spent a lot of time trying to get this to be right, and it came out pretty well, I think. I think it actually looks pretty good, and I actually probably would deploy this app. Do I think this application, though, has a place in an app store? 100% no. They don't like, people don't really care so much unless you're actually purchasing something. Like an Amazon app makes a lot of sense, but this application could be just as good as if it was a mobile website. I'm sure people would actually probably prefer to access that as a mobile website because then they don't have to have kind of a nagging icon there all the time. But it's very possible that if I deployed this to the App Store, I'd probably get a couple downloads, as crazy as that sounds. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's pretty straightforward. The only problems, and I'll reiterate them again, are the location issue here. This works if I don't use this theme. Same thing right here. The button doesn't line up, but if I don't use this theme, it does. And my mailer, for some reason, decided to die on me whenever I was doing it in PhoneGap rather than online. So, but I did leverage it. I did put it into a nice database. But one last thing I'll show you is just saying the checks that I can make with this, and really it's that JQ Bootstrap validation form thing. It's fantastic. You can go ahead and just do this, and we'll just say a phone number is in 5. We'll say the email. We'll make a correct email. Go ahead and do that. And then we'll go ahead and make a correct name. We'll go ahead and do a number like that. And it's going to let it do it, but it's one of those things where it works pretty well. I really like that form. And I'll go ahead and refresh this real quick. Show you there. See, yeah, it's popping it up on my server. So I got easy communication with the server, and if I was to do it again, I would probably say that you shouldn't be the type of person where you want to build this natively. Like I said, I tried to do this in Android Studio and basically just build this application from scratch and just put it in there, and then I realized that there are so many tools out there like PhoneGap and Cordova where this only really took me maybe like a day or so to really get as where I want it code wise, and then it took probably a couple weeks to really iron out a lot of the details, and then it took another couple days for me to come to terms with a few of these things not being able to work. But like I said, it was a really good learning experience, and I'm going to go ahead and detail all the development environment stuff. You're going to get all my source code, and then I'm going to hopefully not leave anything at all out. But if you have any questions, just shoot me an email, and I really appreciate your time. Sorry this video was so long, but I just want to make sure that I hit absolutely everything. That way you don't probably have to go through all that I did trying to get all this set up. So, all right, thank you. Okay.